Hey, this is Lola, but you can call me Lola if you like.
Hi, this is Velisa, and you can call me Vels if you want. And this is the Everybody Hates HR podcast, episode 54. And we have a very, 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 very special guest with us here. I'm going to let Kelechi introduce herself because woman of many hats.
I just say I'm a baby girl. I feel like trying to cover everything is a lot. So
I feel like that's too modest.
It is modest.
So like I think I'm gonna try and list off some of the things. So actor,
yes.
Writer,
Yes.
we'll talk about that. Podcaster,
Yes.
Studio owner,
Yes.
social commentator,
Yes.
all-round baby girl.
That's it.
Terror of singlets.
Terror
on
of
Twitter.
singlets.
I love
Definitely.
that.
I was about to forget that. Professional terror of singlets. Instead of baby girl, I should have actually gone for that.
And actually, quite importantly, you are the inventor, the owner, the avatar, whatever, of Sally in HR.
Yes.
I love that. That's the laugh. That's the laugh. I was on the Sally in HR page yesterday, and I was watching all the videos, and like it's so on the nose. Like for explain what Sally in HR is for those who don't know.
So Sally is I created her just using one of those Apple whatever emoticons, whatever they call them. I remember when they first launched, and I thought, oh, this is cool. Initially, I just did one as me, and I thought, okay. And then I thought, wait, I could be anybody. And then suddenly the idea of Sally came to me, that I would just be this woman from HR. And that was it.
She's the worst HR person that ever existed.
Right. And I feel like, but she represents so many HR kind of professionals that I've come across in life. Not black women. Not black women.
Yeah.
But yeah, quite a few that I've come across, and I picked from different places. I picked up from like things that friends would say, and I wanted to make her absurd to the point that she wasn't triggering. But actually, the more absurd I made her, people were like, "Oh, that happened to me."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh wow, that's wild."
Yeah, and actually, I don't think she's so absurd. I think she's like it should be absurd how bad she is, but I don't actually think it is. Like some of the things she says, like. I saw one when she was like wearing a hijab. Oh, that was bad. So you put that hijab on the character and you was like, oh, I'm wearing a hijab so I can understand the Muslim experience.
It's the laugh for me after everything that she says. Like, it's literally like it's okay.
I've heard that laugh in different iterations throughout the years. And when that laugh comes, it's either your life is over or something like they're about to do something very, very wild.
Yeah.
And they laugh in that like it has to be high pitched because it's like it's a throwaway thing for them. Like it's so
there's
unimportant.
no care. There's no care.
Yeah, like why are you taking this so seriously? Because you're ruining my life.
Yeah, legit. Like so, I just love the character, and I see it. Like, we work in HR, and we'll tell you, be the first to tell you that there's good HR people, and there's some not very good HR people.
Very bad.
And like I love what I like about her is that she's very like it's very on the nose, especially because it was was the character created in 2020, or was that just
that was 2020? Yeah.
And so obviously at that time there was loads of like pushes around like diversity and all this stuff. And I remember there was a clip of like there was two characters, I think Jamar and Tunde.
Yeah.
And she mixed them up, and she was like, I know you have different hair and you kind of look quite different, but it's very easy to mix you up. And it's that kind of throwaway comment that we get, and you would hope that kind of stuff doesn't come through from HR professionals,
right?
But for sure it does.
But then you'll see Rupert and his colleague, another white guy, and you can tell the difference between them, even though they're twins. But you'll be like, the thing is, I can tell the difference between Rupert and his brother because one plays golf on a Tuesday. And it's like,
What are your experiences with HR that made you? Like, how did you know how to be so accurate with Sally? Like,
I think that I've got a knack for impersonations. You know, I think beyond acting, I just like to really observe people. So outside of just HR, I like to watch people and then pick up mannerisms that I think tell me about them. So usually if I'm telling my friends a story about something, I will be every character in that story.
Some great storytelling.
And then they're watching me like, that is dead on. Like, that is them, because you pick up little things that people do. And so I've always known that I wasn't built to work for other people. Like, I feel like there are just some people who know. And I'm not the kind of person that's like, everybody should be self-employed. Please don't. Not everybody needs to have their own business, you know? But I've always known that I wasn't built to work for other people, because I always had a question like, why? Why do we have to do it that way? And I don't generally respect hierarchies. So the way that people would walk through companies and say, oh, that's the CEO, we just can't look. Why? Because a lot of times when I look at my friends who are executive assistants, this, that, the CEO doesn't do much. Like, they seem to be the most out of the loop of everybody, yet they're getting paid the most, and everybody reveres and fears them. I'm just like, move, man. So I've always kind of felt that way. I remember work experience. I had it at this publishing house. I think it was in Clerkenwell at the time. And that was in year 10. And I remember going into the toilets and just being like,
wow.
No, you're in the toilet.
Wow.
When I sat in the toilet, I was like, I cannot do this.
You had that moment early on. We usually get that a little bit later.
From year 10, I was just like, this is not my vibe. Everyone sat at desks, like hunched over. Like, even though they were making a magazine that was really, really popular amongst others, or publishing a magazine, I just thought, I don't like this. And so, because acting was my focus anyway, but because of knowing that, I never wanted to commit to a job. So I would do temp a lot as a receptionist.
What kind of roles have you done? Yeah,
it's receptionist, admin assistant, all like administrative secretarial roles I would take on. Because as far as I was concerned, when I leave the job, that's it. No one can call me about anything. And no matter where I work, they'll be like, but you've got such a great aptitude for other things. Are you sure you had such great ideas for this person and this person? I was like, yeah, I have, but I don't want to be with you. Why is that hard to understand? I don't want to be with you lot. And so people would walk past my desk and they would say certain things. I remember one particular woman, I think she's the one that I built Sally around, when I was working at a company near organisation near Pimlico, and they loved me, so they'd regularly ask for me to come back. So I'd be sat at the desk. There were a few black people that worked there. Didn't really speak to them other than like, hi, bye. Then one day I was wearing one cute dress from Zara, and then the black woman walked by, and we were just having a little kiki, a little tee-hee about how cute the dress was, because she had the same dress. She wasn't wearing it that day. A white woman walks by. Oh, there they go. There they go. The trouble too, sir.
It could have been someone that you never met.
Do you know?
We had never talked before, me and this woman.
That's crazy.
It was literally just a hi bye before, until the day of the Zara dress. And you've already labelled us the trouble two.
You're a gang.
When did you see us together before?
True. You're a gang. It only takes one time. It only takes one time. Now you're a gang.
It's funny because we can laugh at it, but it's not funny. It's actually not funny that's happening.
It's bad. Like, I actually, this week I've had a friend of mine, and she was basically telling me she thinks that her manager may be out to get her. And obviously people say like outlandish things, but like my friends are, they're not that dramatic. I'm probably among the most dramatic. But she told me the story, and I was like, wow, like your manager it doesn't sound good for you, to be honest. Like, I think she had challenged her manager in a group. There was a few people that had challenged, like, in a productive, like, fine way. And of those three people, a white woman, a white girl, and a black woman, of course, she's the one that's been singled out as being aggressive, not knowing how to challenge properly, even though even by the standards of the other two colleagues who were there, they were actually probably went harder than she did. And it's just really sad, because I was trying to find a way to kind of pacify her or make her feel better about what's to come. But it's really hard when you know that really and truly this person may never forgive you. This person may never forgive you, and you can't just do the same thing as your colleagues because you're not white.
And it's so multi-layered, because it's like whiteness is a club. It is an actual club, you know, and they are tuned into, white people are socialized to be tuned into whiteness. So if those two white women that were talking at the manager, she can hear them. She'll still feel that they're idiots and she'll still be offended, but she can hear them. The black woman, she's not socialized to hear what a black woman is saying. Like, she's not. So all she's picking up now, like, your friend could have just been like, look, so I just think that, and all she's seeing is, like, and I want to make a comedy sketch about that, like what they see in our appraisals and what is actually happening. You know, like,
This caught me off guard.
Like, so as far as she's concerned, she'll go back to tell that story and she'll be like, yeah, so when I was speaking to Sade, she just sort of like raised herself and suddenly became bigger at the table and she just started like launching all of these words at me and I just couldn't take it. Meanwhile, Sade was just whispering. I'm just really sorry.
I can have some more.
Yeah. Can I just have more desk space? That's all I need. I just want to put my plant by me. I just want to go. And then she said that she had a jungle and she wanted to bring the jungle into the office. And I just said no.
No, like, I legit think that's what it is. It is. It's like that.
Yeah, there's layers. They really can't. It's really a struggle. So oftentimes I find myself asking people, and I did this when I worked at, these various organizations as well. What do you mean by that?
That's me.
You know, like, just what do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's me.
Velisa. But I actually think you're slightly gentler with it.
So come on now. You're gentler than me.
No, just the tone just now. Oh. See, you are a professional terror of singlets on the internet. Velisa is a professional terror of singlets in real life. And by the time you realise that your singlet is in tatters, you don't even know what's happened. And she'll say very like the tone is gentle, but the vibe, the content, you know what happened. Good. And I love that. That's
like
one
a tornado.
Yeah, I love it. And by the time you know you've swept up, you're
good.
You're just naked in the bush.
Yes.
And I always say, being in HR, I feel like it gives me an extra like superpower that other black people in the workplace don't necessarily have. Whereas like, I am better than you. Like, I'm HR, so I know exactly what I can say. I know what boundaries I can push.
Yeah.
You can't talk to me a certain way. I know how I'm gonna combat you back.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like a lot of not even just black people, just ethnic minorities in the workplace, a lot of them struggle with how far they can argue back or how far they can push back, how far they can push boundaries when having certain conversations, when they're the ones who feel uncomfortable because their boundaries have already been pushed. But so that's why I'm just like,
but the thing is, I think that maybe from our cultures, Afro-Caribbean cultures and things like that, we're not raised to make work our life or the office space. Of course, they want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, all of that stuff, right? As in parents, we're told that the stereotypical aspects of things. But generally, that's a career. We're not raised to make work our life. White British people, especially, or any imperial entity out of Britain, whether that's America, whatever the case may be, they are, and I can't even say it's the same for the rest of Europe because some of them, man, have like 3-day, 4-day work weeks.
Yeah,
so they're not trying to, they're not trying to make all Scandinavia. They were like, we were Vikings for ages. Like, we went and found that trout. Okay, we went and found that trout. We're going to chill out. Okay, it's cold up here. Chill. So they're like, chilling, whatever. Over here, we're trained to make work our life 5 days out of 7.
And what does that
people
make? They'll build their social structures around
You'll find your
work.
husband in the workplace. You'll find your this and that in
your
the workplace.
friends,
Your friends, everything. So when they now go, we're going out for drinks, and you're like, I've got my real friends. I'm going to go meet my real friends.
It's a problem.
Right. Yeah. And then when your appraisal now comes, you're just not a team player, Sade. You're just not. So I remember, and this is just off the top of my head, 17th of April, 3:52. You're like, we invited you out to a roller skate derby, and you said you couldn't come. I couldn't. I'd broken my leg. Well, you have one friend.
Does that stop you from drinking?
Yes. You could have watched.
But what's the reason for that? Why can't I be my own person in the workplace and still do my job well? Like,
I love that though, because I feel like this is exactly it. A lot of workplaces that we look at, this is not every workplace, but a lot of workplaces, especially offices that we look at, right? They are For me, basically, white supremacy is not imaginative. Everything looks like everything else. Schools, prisons, offices, they look exactly the same in the structure of it. There is essentially like an overseer, and then you've got all of the workers. So you've got the supervisors, you've got the this, you've got that. People watching you to make sure that you're being productive, right? And so that's why, and so you need to perform homogeneity, like you need to be like one homogenous entity, move together, like everybody being in a suit. Maybe I don't look cute in a suit. Why? Like I'm not less intelligent because I haven't worn a suit to work. Do you know what I mean? But the homogeneity is what they're pushing, because everybody actually moves as one within white supremacy. You have to move as one entity. So when you now become an anomaly and you're like, oh, well, I don't want to. And you're not even talking, you can actually be happy to subscribe to everything else that they're doing, but you're just like, I just want to go home. Actually, there's always rice at home. There's rice at home. I want to go home. To them, it's like you're saying that you don't want to be part of the entity, and people don't realize that that's more subconscious programming. We think it's an overt cultural thing, but it's real subconscious programming that a lot of white spaces, because before we were allowed to work, when we look at the legislation, before the global majority, I would call them, were allowed to come into these workplaces, they were mainly white. So when you talk about diversity and inclusion, in what are we diversifying and who are we including in what? Because we never identify the what, we just said we want to add people to it, and the what is what needs to change. And then I think then diversity and inclusion actually works.
Yeah, you can't include people in something that is designed not
to include
for them, right?
Yeah.
You can't include people in something that's not for them.
Yeah.
And I think until we get to until people realize that nothing is going to change, because we're so determined to force people into these boxes, but the boxes,
it's not shaped
not
for you, and I don't want to be in a box, you know?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because this conversation around working from home, the way it's presented in the media, you'd think that people were just rolling around naked on their rug in their house and they weren't doing anything. We see research that shows that people were actually more productive at home because they're not having to fake a smile. I'm so glad now that I work for myself, because this is what I hated the most about the workplace. You have to put on a smile the moment that somebody approaches you, because you know that if that smile is not there, it's like, oh, you're a bit tense. I don't like it. I remember one day a guy, when I was working at City University, because once I moved into academia and I started working in administration within academia, I think I preferred that more because I love learning and I just love being around students. So that was my last job before I was just like, I'm out, I'm done with this. But it was left in the best way. So I'm glad that when I left working within institutions, it was with a really cool place. However, I'm at reception now, and I also worked in the for people with neurodivergences and all of that. I worked in that department, so whenever they need to apply for a diagnosis, I was going through all of those forms. And so I was just sitting there, and a guy comes by, and that day I chose to wear a headscarf. He comes by and he's like,
I don't know why I'm laughing already. Sorry.
"What's that scarf on your head?" I said, "It's a headscarf."
Answered your own question.
Do you like Lauryn Hill?
What?
I was like, huh? Or Erykah Badu? I was like, why are you asking me this? He said, no, I just don't know. There's just something about you that just inspires me.
You're his muse.
I just think you'd be musical. But it's funny because I've been working here for about 5 months and you've seen me every single day that you've been in, and not
never
once have you said that I'm musical. But the one day I decide to wear a silk scarf is when I start asking about Lauryn Hill and Erykah Badu.
They have such a limited scope of black people.
Yes,
that's why. It's like a caricature. When you go on holiday and everyone wants to call you Beyonce, you could I would take it. Yeah,
Morocco's Janet Jackson.
Some places Bob Marley. And they'll be like,
I get
if you go to Thailand or somewhere like that, they'll be doing all sorts of gestures. But it's because they don't have any frame of reference of what black. They have so few, such little knowledge of black people that. It's like me saying, I don't even know which white man I would choose. There's just too many.
Yeah,
Do you get what I mean? I'm so aware of so many white men that I wouldn't be able to pin you down to one.
Even all the Chris's. like Hemsworth and this.
They
Like,
all look
you
the
lot
same.
look the same.
They do.
But you all get acting jobs. But as an actor, when an agent, I remember before I got this agent, well, years ago when I started looking at agents, actually, an agent can say to you, oh, sorry, we've already got somebody like you on our books. We're not the same height. We're not the same body type. We're just black.
Yeah.
But when you go further in their books, they've got 5 brunette girls with blue eyes that are 5'5". You know, they've got that. And they can see a difference in having them in their books.
I just think it's crazy. Why would you only even want one? Like, even if why? It doesn't make sense.
I just feel like they just associate us all together. It's like the other day with Idris Elba and Damson Idris.
No,
but they did that to get views. They are wild.
Because what was that?
Because that's not even
it's not the same last name.
Yeah, it's not the same surname.
Like, well, how?
They like the outrage. The thing is, as black people, especially like online, we're so predictable. Me, I'm also in the outrage. They know it. They know that they'll get the views.
That's
they'll
why
know that
I
they'll be
ignored
outraged.
that one particularly. I ignored that one with energy. I try to ignore Piers Morgan as much as possible. All of those people that they love when we get outraged, like they say something so inflammatory and so like I don't know, intellectually dishonest that they know that we're going to ride out, and then when we do, they'll just be like, oh, look, my engagement 3 million.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Kelechi, sorry, how do you, now that you're not in the workplace and you work for yourself, but you still have to deal with these sorts of people, right? Because of what you do, you still have to work with these types of people. How do you deal with those people who remind you of those people you've worked with that don't necessarily understand what it is you do in certain spaces? Like, when I tell my friends that Kelechi's coming on the podcast, they know exactly what they're going to get because they see what you do. But how do you deal with those people who don't necessarily understand it or feel uncomfortable when you do start talking?
It's weird because I think we're all trained to do this, but I think that maybe the way that I've engaged with societal kind of conversations and discourse and stuff means that I'm very good at code switching.
Oh.
So I will still make the same point, but I'll just say it in a way that you can't be like, oh, and then she called me like I didn't. So it's been interesting for me because I get booked all of the time to do, you know, keynote speeches, anti-racism talks, lots of that, whether it's the police, whether it's big like multinational conglomerates, whatever the case may be. And usually the person that books me listens to the podcast. Oh. So the amount of HR people that listen to the podcast, the people who just happen to work in the events team for their company or whatever, but it's usually people who work within DEI. They listen to the podcast, so they book. So they've already kind of
they know what they're getting.
So they know what they're getting, and they know that. Like, I'm not a mad person. Like, I'm still going to come through and do the job. But they're like, my company they need their singlet to be torn. But could you just maybe tear the hem or the sleeve?
Not the whole thing.
Not the whole thing. Don't tear it. Like, so when they tell me, like, how much singlet they want torn, when we have a very frank, very straightforward conversation, I'm like, I got you. And so when I start having a conversation with them, most of them are virtual nowadays anyway, I'm like, this is a discussion. You can say nothing wrong here. You're not going to offend me. So start typing away. I need you to say it to me because there are colleagues of yours that are probably in this space that just wish that somebody would tell you the truth about what you're saying. So it ends up being really healthy, I believe, because then they'll say all of their wayward things and I'll say to them, so you're wrong. And you're wrong here. And I'm going to tell you you're wrong. I'm not going to try and find another way around it. You're just wrong. And here are the facts that show you that you're wrong. And you can see the black people like... You know, that's
I wasn't going to say it, but
they turn their camera on. They're I wasn't going to switch that camera on, but I want you to see you getting told about yourself. Because when I said I was circling back in that email, you didn't want to hear me. Now Kelechi has come to tell you the same thing. So they will tell me, like, white people jump in, tell me all manners of things. But it's useful, you know, it's useful. And there are other situations where I always say, like, I'm not a nice person. Like, I'm just not. But I'm a very kind person.
Yeah.
So I won't go out of my way to cause malice, but I'm not going to try and sugarcoat something that can just be said in a few words rather than like dragging it out. So if people haven't worked with me before and they're like, oh, we just want to check, like, what are you going to... Are you going to ask me if I'm going to swear? Because here are all the links to all of the things that I've done on the news lots of times where that hasn't been the case. So whatever's going on in your head right now, here is factual information to kind of move that away. Here are all the articles I've written. I haven't sweared. I haven't called anyone a PCC. I haven't said anything. Like, everything is just...
And they would, I've seen you on the news, especially that whoever that royal correspondent is. He is the most infuriating person. It's like he lives to lick the boots of the royal family. He's so infuriated, and he just says dumb stuff. And it's so fine because he's a white man. He can actually say dumb stuff without. And if you said some of the dumb stuff that he says, it would like everyone would be like, oh, Kelechi doesn't know what she's talking about. He just says dumb stuff with no, and then you have to debate him, and you have to do it in a way with facts and articulate without just calling him a mugu.
Idiot.
Like,
Mumu. And that was one of my favorite interviews because even in his silliness, I think he's rather good natured. You know, like sometimes then you start looking at the layers of people, because I get very bored with conversations about like white bad, black good. No, like we're all trying to navigate white supremacy. Some people have been given cards that other people have not been given. Show me what your cards are then. And then we know what game that we're actually playing in this situation. So I want to get to the core of a person and really see like, is this what you've been socialized to be, or is this just who you are? Because if this is who you are, I'm going to deal with you severely. But if this were just merely talking socialization, get to work, baby.
I believe that guy, I can't remember what his name is, but I believe that he believes what he's saying. I believe that he's very. I believe that he loves the royal family.
No, I believe that he loves the royal family, but I feel like even when I presented my points, he even went. Because some people they have like they've chosen to believe what they're gonna believe. It's like you know, I listened to a podcast recently and someone was talking about you can't give rational arguments to someone who has a belief that's not rational. People use it for religion. So like you can't, like for instance, any religion, you can't come and say, well, what about this? Because that's the whole basis of faith. And if you have faith in the royal family, for instance, you can't come and rationalize someone out of that because it's to do with what they believe. Like if you believe that the queen has some sort of, or the royal family have some sort of divine right to rule, nobody's going to convince you out of that. They're not. And when they're saying, oh, they're so beneficial for tourism, the GDP is shrunk. Like, what are you talking about? Like literal numbers are there for you to look at, and you're still going with the same like regurgitated misinformation that they're good for tourism. No, people don't see them when they come though. They see the palace. So just like France, they can see the palace without you lot being in there. And I hope that they don't have to go through the same violent means. Get out. You know? Them. Just get out.
I wish they would. I don't know what we have to do. This country, anyway. I don't want to.
They don't. When I just look at it, it's always black people who love them. That I'm just like, wake up.
It is.
Just wake up.
Do you know what?
Black people love the royal family.
Our parents.
No.
I will never forget when my mum found out Princess Diana. I will. It's a key.
I don't mind Diana.
They really cried. They were heartbroken.
Yeah, it was like it's a key moment in my childhood. I remember.
All the aunties love Diana.
And we can let that because you know Diana, she actually looked like she was working.
She tried.
And the fact that she tried to break away from their nonsense as well. I'm like, you know what, you were a real one. You know? And I feel like that's a perfect example of what I'm saying. Like, is this who you are, or is this what you've been socialized into? Because even though she's been socialized to be essentially a child bride to somebody, she was just like, this isn't working for me. And she tried to get away from it.
It's the same with Meghan. Like, it's the same. You did the.
But Meghan, I think, is an interesting one because Meghan is like, there's a part of socialization and also who you. Like when I watched the documentary, I was like,
I didn't watch that one.
Am I bugging? Were you not on the documentary?
No, that was Afua Hirsch.
No. I'm sure
there's another black woman, Velisa.
Let's talk about your behaviour now. now we see what you're doing.
I definitely watched you with something to do with Megan.
I've done quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm putting your muscle. I've been in quite a few things. Not that particular Netflix documentary, but I've been in a few things. But my argument's always been like, she's the perfect example of how depraved Britain is in its racism. They're never going to get past it, because if you can't accept somebody that is very, very light skinned,
close to
and
white,
so I want to, and it's clear that she wants to assimilate.
Yeah,
she wants to. She wants to be part. She even described it in the documentary at one point, like they're this organism, and they could have had me, and I could make them faster, stronger. And
if she did, we wouldn't have any of this discourse.
We would not
it wouldn't exist.
We would not be able to open our mouth.
Nah,
again.
that would be it.
So I'm kind of glad that they didn't accept her, so it could prove what we've always been saying. Because if she had been accepted, even though we know about colorism and how everything works, they would have been like, she's black.
Yeah,
get over it. She's
definitely
black.
But you know, I think it's funny about it. I think it's funny that they couldn't even we know that if they would have accepted her, they would have been able to use that as the thing, and they would have known that but they couldn't even do it,
and that's
so sad.
They are like, they couldn't even hold it in. Like whenever they'd see her, they'd be like,
they couldn't even try to be nice.
The woman that wore the brooch
I
when he
know.
was going to the function, like they couldn't even hold it in. I said, wow,
I think that's crazy, because sometimes
That's
even if you don't like
sickness at
someone,
that
you
point.
just have to take one for the team. Yeah, and this is not even, as a person who's not racist, I can't necessarily understand. But I know what it's like to not like someone and have to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
I have a job.
But that goes deep. They could not, and the British media could not help themselves. What black woman do you know that they've been nice about ever?
Right.
Even if they're nice about you for a few minutes. Like, I think back now to the way that they dragged Naomi Campbell over the same things that essentially Kate Moss had done, apart from like maybe the violent aspects of it. But they dragged her for, her choices and this and that. But now Kate Moss is like creative director at Coca-Cola, which is funny with the pun on Coca-Cola. Like, she's able to do that, but Naomi hasn't got that. She's still essentially walking the runways to have money.
Yeah,
it's true.
And you look at it and you're like, this place is not cool. So that's why whenever they try to bring me up in newspapers or talk about me anyway, I'm like, because I don't subscribe to respectability politics. Like, we will enter the same trouser if you decide that this is where you want to go. Like, let's not do it.
I was listening to a podcast with you on it recently, and somebody had asked you the question about would you debate Piers Morgan for £1 million? Yeah, and I would pay to see it.
Oh, 100%.
I can't lie.
100%.
I would pay to see it. I despise Piers Morgan so much.
Yeah,
but I don't think that I don't know how do you take, not to say that he's a baddie, but that kind of baddie, how do you take them down and not the Instagram baddie?
I was just thinking that baddies.
No.
But when he's a bad guy, he's a criminal. When somebody like that, this is what I wouldn't go on his show. Like, where if I were to debate somebody like Piers, it would have to be neutral territory where there isn't a moderator that's going to tell me to be quiet so you can speak, or whatever the case may be. Your logo, your branding isn't anywhere. We're two people talking, because I think that all of these little signifiers are assertions of power. We're at your, we're doing your thing. Even the way that they would zoom the camera, you're slightly bigger in order. Like, there are so many little
even how they
things.
edit.
And they'll make it let's just people watch a live, an Insta live, let me and you go toe to toe, let's go.
He would never,
he'll walk off. I'm not going to be rational, because you're not a rational person.
Yeah.
So there's no need for me to be rational in this situation. I'm just going to ask you, why is your shirt collar so tight? Like when you'd have to go back to, especially for me personally, growing up in South, I'm just going to talk to you like we talk to each other in school in South London. I'm not going to try to debate you with intellect. I'm going to just drag. Because when it comes to somebody like Piers, you have to almost adopt the mindset of a bully. And with a bully, the main thing is ridicule. You just have to ridicule the person to the point where whatever that they're about to say actually isn't important anymore.
Doesn't
matter.
matter.
All people can think about is how you've made them look ridiculous. So that's what I would do. I would just ask him really random questions while he's talking.
But that's what he does to other people. He'll be talking, and he knows what gets engagement. So you'll be talking about Just Stop Oil, and he'll be like, "Tell me, what makes a woman a woman?" And it's like, that's not what the person came here to talk about. You're just trying to bait them into some sort of conversation
that they're not prepared for.
That they're not prepared for.
Telling them as well.
Exactly. Not even because they would answer it incorrectly, but when you're on TV, you might stumble over that, especially if that's not what you came prepared to talk about. It's like asking Piers Morgan, like, I don't know, like, which direction does he wipe his ass? Like, if he does.
Towards his mouth.
Anyway, one Piers Morgan. Moving on. So, how do you pick your battles? Because I feel like in the workplace, people are constantly having they've got a Sally in HR, or they've got a Sally in marketing, or whoever it is that's constantly who's making these comments all the time, and they're described as microaggressions, right? How do you pick your battles? How do you know when to say, do you know what, this is the one I'm going to explain XYZ to them, or this is the one I'm not going to say anything?
I think it's a case by case basis, you know, and everybody's built different. It depends on because when we say the battle, you have to pick the battle because you have to be aware of the war. Like, what are you prepared to do, and what war are you fighting? That will help you strategize which battles you then pick, because you should only pick the battles that you're going to win. You know, that's what Sun Tzu said in The Art of War. Like, go for the battles that there is a very, very high percentage that you're going to win. If there isn't a high percentage, you need to re-strategize. And sometimes what looks like retreat is the best thing for you. Like, let people underestimate you. Play the fool. Like, there's a reason that white people love the minstrel shows so much. They love themselves performing as black people, performing as black stupid people, as they would depict us. There's a reason that they like that. So sometimes let them have their minstrel show, knowing that what you're trying to get from this. Are you trying to buy a house? Okay, so if you're trying to buy a house, how much are you trying to save? You always have to keep at the forefront of your mind what you're there for. And if you don't actually have anything tangible that you're there for, why are you there? Why? Be somewhere else. Because you're talking about this cost of living crisis, I get it, and we are in one, but you're not a tree. Like, you have to, there are so many things that one needs to weigh up. And I have it all the time on social media. People talk on me wild sometimes. And I have to just look at it and be like, is it worth responding? And I wasn't always that way, because if you talk to me, I will talk back, and what I'll say to you will be 10 times worse than what you said to me.
You've seen. You've seen.
But then it got to a point where I was just like, nah. And I've started learning a lot, for instance, about human design. And human design, it has different energy types for different people. And my energy type is a generator. So I amplify things. And we see that on my social media. What I'm good at is amplifying issues that are happening so everybody else can know about it. But the same way I can amplify issues, I can also amplify somebody's nonsense. So when I'm responding to that person, I'm actually bringing a big spotlight or a big megaphone to go, tell us more ridiculous things. Yeah. And sometimes people actually enjoy that. And it's not doing anything. I'm giving them power. So I just now pull back. Like, if I don't acknowledge you, you'll stay at your 0 likes and you'll stay at your 0 retweets. Yeah. So you can just be there.
I think it must be quite hard, because you're one of those people that people send stuff to you, like, comment on this, comment on this, tell us about this, read this person, like, drag them, tell us England, like, what do you think about this? Like, it must just be like very overstimulating, and you must, like, I've seen you say before, like, I'm not speaking about that because I don't want to.
I'm not your rent and angry black woman. You can't keep sending me things. And if you want to send me things, there's a podcast for that. Like, so I usually say, here's the email to the podcast, send it there, because I know that when I go in that inbox, every manner of nonsense I might see there. And that's fine. Let me be set up for that. But I'm not this like little bulldog that you're like, I'm gonna.
Do you feel like that's how people see you though, like as the angry black woman who's gonna talk on?
And the thing is, I feel like I'm a physical representation of the anger that a lot of black women don't want to feel for themselves, because they are trying to survive, they're trying to navigate workspaces, they're trying to assimilate in workspaces and just make it through. And before, I think that I held a certain level of resentment for that. And it's funny because even though I've got my fiction short story collection coming out in September, the initial book that I wanted to write was non-fiction, and it was about anger and how I believe that feeling anger, working through anger, can be a liberating force for black women, because usually the thing that they're trying to hold us back with is usually the key to our liberation. They keep calling us angry black women. They keep calling us angry. Why only us? Why is it only us that's being called angry? Because actually they know that we have every reason to be angry. So while it might sound woo-woo to some people, I do believe that there is a link between the anger that we are not choosing to feel and fibroids, endometriosis, all of these things that seem exacerbated when we look at statistics as it it pertains to black women, like, there is a reason for that, because where are you storing the anger that you're refusing to feel? And yes, a lot of times we say, oh, take it to God, but sometimes somebody needs to get punched in their face. What happens then?
Sometimes you need to take it to the street.
We're all South London babes, so we
we
get it.
So where do we find the balance, you know? And sometimes people want to talk to friends, and maybe friends can't hold it. So it's like, where does the anger go? So the chapters were going to be about healthcare, finance, relationships, because a lot of times relationships and the way that black women try to navigate relationships can be so hard, and a lot of repressed anger. Again, they don't have anywhere to put it, because this is not what this man is with you for. He wants you to be good and a good woman,
not complaining,
right? And you know, be the neck and not the head, and whatever else. Like, there's so much there that I really wanted to unpack, and the publishers were like, but how do we make this universal so it can apply to everyone? But it doesn't apply to everyone. It applies to black women. I'm talking to black women. There are lots of books that talk to white women and other women, you know. I want to talk to black women, because we are the ones specifically that have been tarnished with this trope. So I think that when people see me being quote unquote unapologetic, quote unquote angry black woman, they're like, yes, she's saying that's what I always get. You say what I couldn't say. And I'm always like, but why can't you say it? But of course I understand realistically why you can't say it, especially if you don't work for yourself. Yeah. You've still got bills to pay. I'm not going to say, can we shout at your co-worker or shout at your boss and then you lose your job. But there has to be something that does change in the workplaces, which is why, again, it's full circle. I then come in to do the talks. So to say the things that hopefully change the environment, or at least get people talking within your environment, so it makes things easier for you. Yeah. And then you can carry on doing your job. But the battle picking thing, it just comes down to the, you know, what it is that you want. What is the overall thing that you aim to achieve? And then you work from there.
I'm so glad that you saying that you're going to spaces and doing these talks and, you know, having the conversations that people need to have, because on last week's episode we spoke about, you know, there's a lot of people who do like DEI training, unconscious bias training,
TikTok exercise
training, yeah. And we were saying that if we were ever to do it, you have to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You have to feel uncomfortable. I watched one being done. I went to some motorsports event, and they were trying to think about diversity in motorsports, especially like when we look at Formula One, Lewis Hamilton having been the only black person, as they say, for so long.
And dominating.
Right? And like, we've got these young black drivers that are coming through now, and they're fantastic, but they're going to come and meet the same madness that he's been trying to navigate all these years. So anyway, I was at this talk, and then they hired this man, and they love hiring this particular man to come and do his unconscious bias training. And he gets there and he tells analogy after analogy that basically boils down to, you're not a bad white person. You just didn't know. But now that I've said the things that I've said today,
I think I know who you're talking about.
See what I mean about
I think I know who you're talking about.
Now that I've said what I've said, I hope that stays with you.
I'll put money on it. I know who you're talking about.
And that's where you change from. And I was watching going, what did you even say? Uncle, what have you said? What have you said? These people are looking at you and they're still going to walk outside today and they're going to call someone the N-word and they're even going to say with more vigor.
But now they'll just say, but it's not my fault. I'm not a bad person.
It's not my fault.
I just didn't know.
I'm unconsciously biased. Even when Harry got on TV, again, I think that he must have got his DI training from this person as well.
Yeah.
Because he was like,
I was so disappointed with that.
Did he say the woman that did that to Ngozi was not racist?
Was
unconscious bias. There's a difference.
I was so disappointed.
So now people are literally, there's an athletics coach that's been banned. He was the head of England athletics or whatever, one of the coaches. And he said to the athletes that the reason that black people run so fast is because they're used to running from burglaries.
Excuse me? And
when they did the hearing, all the tribunals, everything, they were like, yeah, but unconscious bias.
What?
What was unconscious about that? He wasn't sleeping. He wasn't snoring when he said it. He was very awake. He was very conscious.
Unconscious bias.
So it's a get out of jail free card.
This is what I was about to say.
It is.
It's just a way for people to like remove all sort of accountability from the nonsense that comes out of their mouth.
And somebody's going to help you push it back into your mouth. If you're like, that's what they don't understand. Like, it's important to know where you're going wrong, because someday somebody's going to set you right, and you might not like it. So just do the work now. And so I make it clear when I do these talks. I don't believe in unconscious bias training. I don't believe in unconscious bias in that way. Like, I just don't. Like,
I
we
said
shouldn't
it.
keep talking about that. Let's talk about, like, anybody that you hire to do DEI and they don't say these 3 words, they are thieves. White supremacist heteropatriarchy. If they don't say those 3 words, if they cannot link the things that you are dealing with, the dynamics that you are currently trying to overcome, if they can't say those 3 words to you during that talk, they're thieves, because that means that they don't want to talk about the real elephant in the room. So I remember writing for a HR magazine and I called it the racial elephant in the room, that people want to talk around these things. Diversify, inclusion. How did these environments end up being homogenous in the first place? Why were they white only in the first place? Why did legislation have to come in to change that? And why, even though the legislation came in decades ago, are we still not seeing much of that
we
reflected?
don't like history. We don't like history. That's one thing that we don't like. We don't like history. We're very selective with our history. Like, we remember what we want to remember. If it's that someone went and conquered someone, but we want to when they raped and they
the
stole
British
them.
are very reserved. Like, they sweep everything under the carpet.
It's all the stuff they want to sweep under the carpet.
Right, and I think that's why it's important to, when I go on the news, I'm just going to say what it is. So while, for instance, Dr. Shola gets into like the interpersonal dynamics of like royal families and things like that, I don't care. I personally actually don't care too much about what they've got going on. What I'm trying to say is, like, look at this dynamic and how it's affecting us as a nation, as people, as black people, right? This is what we should be focusing on, and this is why the monarchy needs to be abolished for these reasons. You can't be saying that we're in a cost of living crisis and people are broke, but you spent 250 million on a coronation, and then in fact you're raising the grants that used to upkeep the palaces, you're raising it by what, 80 something million?
It's just wickedness.
They don't want to hear it. You must have sat down and done like a briefing talk or something. Someone's like, do you know what, Kelechi, maybe you're not for us.
They wouldn't try.
I could imagine you saying white supremacy.
There was one that they actually went, I think it might have even been that. So they everything was booked, everything was ready, and somebody DM'd me that was on the black sort of caucus for that company, massive company, massive. They DM'd me and they're like, oh, they've booked you, but they're now asking certain questions, and I don't know, what do you want me to say back to them? I didn't even open the message. I just pretend like I didn't see the message, because I was just like, let them come and say whatever it is that they're asking you, let them come and say it to me. Because essentially they're asking you like, oh, as a black person,
you go. Yeah.
So I didn't answer. Next day, my agent gets an email and they're like, oh, we've decided to go in a slightly different direction with this talk, but we're happy to pay the full fee. That's when I was like, you've dropped $4,000. You've just dropped $4,000.
They basically said,
given me
here's some
$4,000
hush money, because they don't want you to go and
So that's what I mean. Like, don't dare, because if we've agreed that this is what we're doing, and the thing is, I don't pitch to people. You come to me. So whoever's told you that this is what you should be doing, right? And before we get into the ins and outs, here are my rules and regulations. I require a deposit before we're going to do anything. So put that down, and then we can start talking back and forth about what this creatively looks like. Because even then, if we decide to part ways, which we never have, I've got my money.
Yeah.
Right? But I think that because of the type of people, and I've got to give it to some white women, you know, and a couple of white men who work in very massive companies who, whenever they have an initiative, they know that they've got a big budget. They're like, Kelechi, can you come and do this? Because they listen to the podcast, so they know what it's going to be. They'll be like, okay, you're going to be dealing with this type of person. So just come at it in a slightly... I say, okay, got you. And then that's it. So the message is still delivered. It's delivered like the way it needs to be. Like, I've just got a very straightforward, nicely done PowerPoint presentation that talks about even the history of race. So we talk about Carolus Linnaeus, and in 1753, him writing about the Homo Afer and Homo Europaeus, and I show them the character traits that he put under Homo Afer and the character traits that he put under Homo Europaeus. And I was like, can you see those character traits today, and how sometimes you might describe your colleagues that are not white? Yes. Okay, so let's all just tell the truth. That's my thing. Yeah. We don't have to choose sides, but can we agree on the truth?
Yeah.
And I think that that's transformative. But again, we've noticed that a lot of DI people, heads of diversity, heads of creative diversity at so many organizations, BBC, all of them, so many massive companies, they've been dropped, right? In the past few months. I knew it was coming because last year's Black History Month was rather quiet.
It was quiet.
Yes.
It was so quiet.
I wonder what this one's going to be saying, but it was quiet.
February, so I thought maybe it's Britain. Then February was quiet for the Americans. I said, something is coming.
Yes.
Quiet.
It's coming. And then suddenly,
there's no investment.
Everybody's...
They're thinking, 2020 is 2 years ago now. People have forgotten.
But what they don't understand, and this is why I'm an astrology babe. So when lockdown happened, that was when we had like Saturn in Aquarius as well as Uranus in Aquarius. Planet of disruption is Uranus. Saturn is about rules, regulations, and the institutions. Aquarius represents groups of people, large groups of people. So Saturn, restriction came in over large groups of people. We had lockdown. Then Saturn moved into Pisces, and now we're going to be looking at Pisces, ruled by Neptune, deals with drugs, illusions, that sort of thing. And you now notice that people are talking more about plant medicine. Like I went on an ayahuasca retreat. People are talking about psilocybin, like mushrooms and things, and how it helps with mental health. So now you can see like the big pharma is trying to find a way to regulate what is inevitable. We also know about the fat loss injections. There's regulation that needs to be done around that. So Saturn is now going to go and deal with drugs because it's already dealt with large groups of people in Aquarius. Pluto is the power, has the power of disintegrating something over a long space of time. So Pluto stays in a sign for 20 years. But whatever Saturn didn't finish, Pluto will come and finish, right? So Saturn has left Aquarius, it's gone into Pisces. Pluto is now coming into Aquarius. The moment that Pluto dipped its toes into Aquarius, they started calling Trump up for all of the lies and the things and all the, sexual assault, all the things that he's done. Suddenly, all these charges are coming up against him because that's what Pluto does. Pluto comes back and says,
coming to deal with people.
Yeah, come on, you. Oh yeah, you're a bad guy, you're a criminal. Come here. And it starts gathering everybody. But Pluto stays in a sign for 20 years. The last time that Pluto was in Aquarius, there was the French Revolution. America just declared independence from Britain. So there is a theme of when Pluto enters, the people, Aquarius, large groups of people find the power, Pluto, to say, everybody get out. So a change is coming. So Pluto is going to go back into Aquarius from January 2024, and it's going to be there for 20 years.
We need to prepare ourselves.
I feel like the monarchy is going to go in that time.
Do you think?
If not go, there'll be... You know that they usually call them figureheads. They'll literally then become figureheads. Like every power will be removed from them because I think there's going to be something that wakes people up. So if lockdown... So the reason I brought it up was because lockdown showed us, like, unfortunately, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and we started having all of these conversations about racism. So I think... Unfortunately, people think that the conversation is done. But the thing is, Saturn just came to come and be like, hey girls, you have a problem. I want you to sort it before my big homie Pluto comes through, because if you don't,
scatter everything.
It's going to scatter the place. And so I think that the anger is actually building with a lot of people. And I really do think that what we saw in terms of people working from home and everything during lockdown when Saturn was in Aquarius, it will have to become the norm in Pluto, because people are actually going to be, look at all the strikes that are happening. And that, I don't know what that's like for HR in terms of managing people and dealing with people, or that, what do they call HR people now? People
partners,
people partners. Yeah.
This, that, and the other.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that must be really, really difficult, but more is coming where people don't care that you've put a law, or Thatcher put in a law, like we shouldn't do a general strike. People are going to strike everywhere.
Wait.
I love that for them.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I want them to strike.
So and then we'll have to look at new ways of working. Not everybody functions well working in an office. And also, not everybody's a morning person. I would love to work for your company, but I don't want to work 9 to 5.
I'm like that. I think like my peak productivity times, I think I'm on US hours. I can work into the night. But for early afternoon, you catch me, it'll be great. If I'm working in the morning and you see email from me before 9 o'clock, I'm up against it.
Yeah, no,
see?
9.
And so how does it look? What does it look like then if an organization goes, okay, you can work from 6? You know, what does that look like? Because maybe you just prefer that. And do they have work that you could do at 6? Like, do you need me to do this between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.? Or could I do it at a time that's just more conducive to how I work? And this is what I'm saying, like, we see so many people talking about depression and anxiety and so many things. And I do believe that it's because people are they're being forced to work out of their natural rhythm.
100%.
And if your company wasn't giving you health benefits, especially when we're looking at America, health benefits, the salary that you get to be able to do this, that, would you be there? If your company that you were with, it was you could just volunteer to be there, would you be there? Because if it's a no, then should you be there?
I mean, I think that's a no for the majority of people.
Exactly. So then why are they working?
Yeah. Money. Like it's a means to an end.
When I was on maternity, and still getting money but not at work, I said this year. I even went to Dubai. I was like, hey.
And but that's why it should be. We should have universal basic income for every single person.
But if you say that, they'll call you a communist.
But then when I went back to work, it was it was the biggest culture shock going back to work and working, because now I was off for 15 months. So my whole thing felt so, I was so relaxed. I was so happy.
Right.
I'm telling you, my eyesight improved a little bit. It did. Because I wasn't staring at a laptop. Yeah.
But look at what you said, happiness and relaxation. You were relaxed, you were happy, your normal state. Like, we're not allowed to be in our normal state a lot of the time. And so cortisol, the stress hormone, is building in our systems, and then we're worrying, like, why is my skin? Why am I
all coming out in your body?
Why? It's all coming out in your body because your body's like, what are you doing? But it's like, I've got to work. I need money. So you're using the money that you're earning from this place to deal with the ailments that have been caused by this place.
It's true. One of my friends broke out in hives, like serious hives from work.
Yeah.
As soon as they went on holiday, the hives disappeared. Yeah. Everything went.
And we're hearing more cases of that now since 2020. Since people, because it's unprecedented, where everything lock off at the same time. It's unprecedented, right? We're living through unprecedented times.
Yeah.
I hope this email meets you well. Yeah, it's not met me well. Don't meet me again. So once people got a taste of what that's like, suddenly you realize that where you are is actually just not very conducive to a healthy life.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, they've just brought in the new law, haven't they, in the UK about flexible working.
Day one.
So from day one, you can apply for flexible working, and now your company has to literally tell you, basically face to face, why you can't do whatever pattern it is you've asked for. And so they have to now really think about a valid reason, because before with flexible working they could just say no, business needs, business reasons. But now they actually have to give
wait 6 months, right?
Now you can do it twice.
Yeah, and from day
one. Yeah,
and that's really good. Because and a lot of people said that during lockdown. They were like, I remember asking my office, my workplace, can I work from home? And they were like, what?
Yeah.
But now what do you mean? How's that gonna work?
So now look.
And then lockdown happened. It's like, so I hope everybody's enjoying working from home. It can work, but this is what I'm saying. When you've got a plantation mentality, they want you in the workplace so they can perform that power dynamic where you are overseen. And then if you feel like someone's constantly, why are you timing my lunch? Is everybody all right? Yeah. I will eat if I want to eat for 2 hours.
I'll eat for 2 hours.
But
do you know how long it takes for everyone to digest? Are you mad?
But the only time your lunch if it's too long. If it's too short, they would say, "Oh, Kelechi, please take an extra 20 minutes."
You're back at your desk. Before I open my eyes, you better be back over there. Go and have a massage. Off you go.
They don't time it that way. When you come back on, they're like, "Oh."
Have either of you watched Streaming Whilst Black?
No, not yet.
Oh my God, it's fantastic. I don't just say that because my friend's in it, but it is.
Vanessa?
No, Demi. He's
okay.
Yeah, fantastic. Honestly, it's really good, and it's kind of like Sally and the HR on steroids. The way that they play things out in the workplace with the black woman, with the black man, with how like the white friend in the workplace is like, oh, I'm seeing this girl. What film? And then he's like, oh, what do you mean? Like, is it Love and Basketball? he's like, it's just funny because some of the stuff I saw, it was real. Like when they're talking to the black woman, she's got like a big afro, and they're like, oh my God. Like your hair, like literally,
Very
and then she is so like, but honestly, it's so good because it's like a kind of gentle approach so that everybody can watch it, but it's enough for you to clock on to what's actually happening in Dreaming Whilst Black, and it follows like a struggling director throughout it. Yeah, so it is fantastic.
I'm gonna watch it. That just reminds me. There's two things that I really want to talk to you about before we run out of time. Firstly, is your book.
Yeah.
Can I just say, before, like, I didn't know what your book was about. I was genuinely surprised when I found out what it is about. Yeah, I was like, oh, this is not what I expected, but I really love it. Yeah, I think it's great.
Because, and I think that's that speaks to what Toni Morrison said years ago about the function of racism. The very real function of racism is distraction. Somebody tells you that you can't swim, you're like, oh look, I can swim. Somebody tells you you're a monkey. I'm not a monkey. You spend so much time trying to describe and justify who you are, and always going to find proof for who you are rather than just living. And so it was important for me, although I wanted to write the nonfiction that I said about anger, the way that life played out and everything played out, because trust and believe, the publishers then started coming back afterwards when 2020 was going off and everybody was getting these book deals to write about what it's like to be black and what white people, or they were doing all of that stuff. Suddenly they're back with me like, is Kelechi still writing that book? No, I'm doing something else now. And I thought about it, and I thought I can always come back to that book. In fact, that book needs research. I need to spend a lot of time talking to different types of black women, doing all that. But this book, love, we need more love in the world, and I love a romance, but I thought rather than shouting, mix the romance with the social commentary, and all the protagonists are black women, and they don't experience like trauma. I don't want suffering for these protagonists, and I make a point of even how I've written them, like, you know that they either maybe light skin or brown skin or dark skin, like, you know, like I've taken time to describe it. So tomorrow, if you buy the TV rights to this, and I see a mixed race babe where I've described dark skin babe, we're going to have a problem, right? So it's those things. I just wanted to honor black women by giving them an alternate universe where it's very close to this one, but in that one, we're not trying to explain so much. We're just being. And looking at how technology, because I think that this is another thing that HR will then have to start contending with as AI and all of these things come into play, intellectual property, all of these things like data mining of employees, all of these things start happening. And I thought ahead, like, essentially, black people, especially when I look at Yoruba spirituality, Yoruba cosmology, if we're talking about AI and 0-1 binaries, if we look at Ifa, like, that was already there. That predates a lot of other systems by 12,000 years. So we, as Yoruba people, had the original AI. And that's why it still works till today, when you can do divinations based on that. And it's funny how colonialism, British colonialism, and before that Portuguese meant, and Dutch, that meant that Yoruba people or Nigerian people look at their own indigenous practices as demonic, but they don't realize that the technology that they're going to bring you tomorrow was the one that you had yesterday. What are you going to do today to reclaim that, like to reclaim your history? So the stories are dystopian, speculative fiction, and the basis of every short story is love, essentially, and then technology like sprinkled in it.
I love that. And what's it called?
Edge of Here.
Edge of Here.
And it's out in September 14th.
I'm doing an event on the 22nd of August, which is a couple of weeks before, where people can get it earlier, because it's with Roundtable Books, and they're wonderful. They're based in Brixton. So yeah, but I'm excited. I feel like I talk enough about heavy stuff, you know, and I want a gift to black women where it's not always heavy. Like, it's cute, and I take the piss out of people, you know, like character, just like, you know, the Sallys and the things that we've talked about. I sprinkle them in and let people figure out. So one of the stories is called Ally Chip, where a white person can have a chip implanted, or any person can have a chip implanted in their brain, and a black person has the chip as well. And so instead of feeling the effects of racism for themselves, it gets transmitted to the white person.
Sounds like a Black Mirror episode.
I was gonna say,
Black Mirror moved to Netflix.
I was gonna say, like certain people are running out of steam. So they need some new ideas. That's what I'm saying.
Charlie, wow. If you want to read every single person, in fact, I think it was mentioned in Elle magazine recently, and they literally said, if you love Black Mirror, you're gonna love this.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have to love Black women being protagonists, because that's what it is, you know. So a Black person has the chip, white person has the chip. If Black person is experiencing racism, it's the white person that feels the emotions of it,
and that will stop you. That's
you
would
think it would.
Okay, I'm gonna read the book.
You would think it would, but that's a commentary again. Like we were just talking about the DEI and these talks. Yeah. If what you're trying to address is racism without addressing white supremacist heteropatriarchy,
it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. So a lot of the white people start suffering from ally chip fatigue. It's like, it's just so hard. It's just so, I can't do this.
That also sounds very
that was 2020 as well.
Very realistic.
Yeah, 2020, they actually said I'm suffering from allyship fatigue.
That's crazy.
And so that's why I was just like, for 3 months, you had to hear about racism and now you're tired. Interesting.
That's the worst thing you could do. It's not the racism itself, it's calling someone racist.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's where the most of the
I haven't got a
from.
racist bone in my body.
Oh my God.
I never forget.
And it's always the bones. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's your blood. Have you thought about that? Don't
brain.
worry about the bones.
Your heart.
I'll never forget the conscious, unconscious bias training I did. And we had to line up. And then the statement was, I'd rather be a racist than be called a racist. And somebody stepped forward, as in like they would, we argued because that was the point of like the training, but you know me. So like she ended up crying and I was like, you're crying?
Of course.
What else?
Get Sharon Osbourne on the phone.
I couldn't believe it.
That's the go-to, because again, people aren't socialized to use their words.
That's crazy. She literally cried. I was thinking, there's no way you're crying because I think you're wrong for preferring to be called the racist.
Something that you admitted openly.
Literally.
You could have. The thing is, she could have lied.
She could have.
But she was like, no.
You stand 10 toes down on what you're saying.
Literally 10 toes down.
I couldn't believe it. I'll never forget that. She cried. I just could. And then from that day on, every time she saw me at work, because she felt like we had resolved it there, she was like, hi, police, like, you know, how
really make the breakthrough there.
Yeah, like literally she was so like,
racist, but I'm
so connected to you now.
Basically.
It really just two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. When I worked in a call center, whenever this white guy would see me walking by, because I worked in a lot of call centers before doing the temp stuff, he'd see me walking by, I'd be like, they see me rolling.
Why please? No, it's so audacious. And it's actually funny because it's so audacious.
I would go to my desk. He would literally be sitting there. We were selling wines, or sometimes we'd be selling wines. Sometimes we'd be selling blinds. And he'd be like, "Hello, it's me calling from whatever blinds. How are you this evening?" They see me.
No,
do you know what's funny? If we hadn't experienced it ourselves, the people will say you're lying. Like, people will say, I don't believe you. Like,
no, honestly, I
don't believe that could happen.
The day I wake up and it's this sort of like noughts and crosses dystopia, I wonder what kind of person I'll be. I want to believe that I'll be an ally. I'll be an ally.
Well, let's see.
I'll be an ally. Like, but mate, I just don't understand. It is, but it's crazy. Like, even the little bits of, I think you can tell because, like, the little bits of power that I have, I try to use it responsibly.
Yes.
And some people, even black people, brown people, whatever, you see them get a little bit of power and you see them
ticket inspectors,
certain security people, just anyone, even just people at work, anyone who's a job's worth in general, with no good reason. I know that if it was noughts and crosses, they'll be doing nonsense. Yeah.
They'll be doing nonsense.
That's funny.
Wow.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
It's been so good. Can you give us a little bit of Sally in HR as the outro? Tell us about your socials as Sally.
Wow, thank you so much for having Kelechi on. Sorry, is it Kelechi or Kelechi? I never can get it right. You know, these ethnic names. Can you say that these days? Well, it's been a real joy being on your BAME podcast. Really well done. Honestly, well done to you both. Because it must be really hard, really, really hard. And you didn't have a script, so really well done with that. Can I ask Josh? Can they read? Well, really well done. But for Kelechi, you can find her on @Kelechnikov. That is such a violent, isn't it like Kalashnikov? I think it's really violent. Well. That was it. That's it. It was just a quick one, really. Just Kelechnikov and Kelechnikov_studio for the pole dancing. Are we allowed to say that? We need to check the regulations.
We will put all of your information in the description. So for those of you who don't speak Swahili, it'll be written below. But thank you so much.
Thank you. That's a wrap, guys. Yes. Bye.
No, that was so fun.